What's up guys, Jeff from Sorta Healthy here, and today we'll be talking about how you should cool down your clients as a personal trainer. We've recently covered warming clients up in a previous video, so we felt like it was a good time to tackle cooling clients down as well. Your cool down should achieve a few basic things at the end of your session. Obviously it should cool your client down, and when I say cool your client down, by the way, there's a few things that I'm talking about in particular which we'll cover soon. Another thing that your cool down should do is enhance your value as a trainer. Really every part of the session should enhance your value, but the cool down is very important for a few specific reasons. So today we'll be going over cool down techniques that successfully close out your workouts while also adding extra value to your sessions. All of this really ends up meaning better results for your clients and more cash for you. All I ask before we get into all of that is that you consider supporting the channel. All you have to do is tap that little thumbs up down there and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. This channel is a free resource for all fitness professionals, and that little gesture really helps us out. Thank you very much everyone, I really appreciate it. On to the rest of the video. So before we talk about anything else, why is it important to cool down in the first place? Well, one of the main things a cool down should do on a physical level is gradually lower your client's heart rate. During the main portion of a session, your client's heart rate should be fairly elevated. How elevated it is will depend on what kind of stuff you're working on, but any typical training session will include portions of work that are challenging cardiovascularly. One thing you really don't want to do is have your client go from a very high heart rate to a low heart rate quickly. Our cool downs should gradually lower our client's heart rate to avoid this sudden drop. On a related note, gradually cooling down helps to prevent blood pooling as well. When exercise is stopped abruptly, this can cause blood to pool in the lower extremities and slow its return back to the heart and brain. This can lead to lightheadedness, dizziness, and fainting, and this blood pooling effect is why it's not that uncommon for someone to pass out in a locker room after working out intensely and not cooling down properly. The other main reasons to cool down are that it could play a small role in minimizing DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, and cooling down could help to improve flexibility and reduce injuries. Obviously, your client's physical body and what you actually do in your cool down determines how effectively you're able to achieve all of those things. But hey, that's what we're discussing and working on today. Admittedly, in my own workouts, like me working out my own, more so in the past, I haven't always been the best about cooling myself down. Cool downs are important though, especially when working with older or unhealthy populations. Even if you're younger and healthy, you should still cool down. Better safe than sorry. So make sure you cool all of your clients down every time. Now that we've briefly covered some of the reasons why you should cool clients down, let's discuss the best way to handle cool downs in sessions. There are several sections to almost every personal training session that I do. You always want to start things off with a warm-up. This should be mostly dynamic, but it shouldn't be limited to only dynamic things. Like I said before, we've got a video on what your warm-up should be. I don't want to get too off topic here, so check that video out for proper warm-up design and ideas. After the more traditional warm-up section, I like to move into what I call the activation section, which usually includes an exercise or two. It doesn't always feel amazing to warm up quickly and then move right into the most intense move of the day. Activation moves are meant to bridge the gap between those biggest moves of the day and the warm-up. They help to fire up some of those underactive muscles, but they don't fatigue you that much. Third, we have the main portion of the session. This is where your client is doing most or all of the biggest moves of the day. Even though I'm talking about this section the least, this makes up the bulk of the session. Fourth, we have accessory work and core work. And this fourth section of the workout is the first part of the cool down. The idea with this section is to gradually lower the intensity as your workout is coming to a close. Just like anything, this section varies day to day and person to person. That being said, I generally try to have this section look a little something like this. The accessory and core work section should be composed of 0 to 3 accessory moves and 2 to 4 core exercises. Accessory moves could be things like bicep curls or clamshells. You're still working here, but it's not at the same intensity level compared to bigger moves that came earlier in the workout. You should also throw a handful of core exercises into this portion of the session as well. I think doing most or all of your core work in the beginning of the workout is a little silly. I'm looking at you when I say that, NASM. Most, if not all of your core work belongs here at the end of the workout because it's accessory work, and that's where accessory work goes. An activation move or two before the big lifts is good, but you don't want to do too much before the biggest moves of the day. Your client is definitely getting some good core work throughout their entire session if you're doing your job well. Compound exercises like the deadlift, squat, row, etc., all these compound movements and others require require you to brace and keep a tight core for best form. When we're talking about the general population though, even with the guidance of a trainer, usually these people aren't lifting often enough or even heavy enough to stimulate the core to the extent that it should be stimulated. Essentially, almost all of these general population clients would benefit from a little extra core work. So including most, if not all of that within your cool downs achieves a few different objectives at once. One, like we said, it helps us to go from challenging bigger compound moves to less fatiguing, more concentrated exercises. This helps to gradually lower heart rate, prevent blood pooling, etc. It also allows us to correct a major issue that the general population has, which is underactive core muscles. And lastly, it helps us to be very efficient with timing in our sessions. So what does this accessory and core work section typically look like? Well, my sessions are 45 minutes long and I reserve 5 to 10 minutes for this part of the workout. If your session is 30 or 60 minutes long, what you do might be a little bit different. Anyway, like we said before, there are 0 to 3 accessory movements in this section. You're also going to want to do a handful of core exercises in this section, and the number of core exercises that you're doing can vary a fair amount. Just make sure that your client is still working here, but not as hard as they were in the main part of the session. After that fourth part of the session, we enter the last part, which is stretching. I almost always do 3 to 5 minutes of assisted stretching with my clients. What kind of stretches we do depends on the client, their goals, and what we did in the workout, but there are generally 2 different stretching routines that I bounce between. Instead of just talking about that, let me demonstrate for you. So like I just said, there are generally 2 different assisted stretching routines that I do with clients. One is more lower body focused and one is more upper body focused. Clients really like both of them, and having either one of them at the end of your session really does help to boost your value as a trainer. Sometimes I will mix in other stretches as well if I feel like the client would benefit from it. Mostly for timing purposes, I only do 3 stretches at the end of a session, and usually I reserve about 3 to 5 minutes at the end of the session for those 3 stretches. And on that note, let's get into the 3 lower body stretches that I typically do with a client. So Alexis, let's have you just lie on your back and relax, which is usually what I say when the workout is over and we've done that fourth part of the session, which again, that's the accessory work and core work. So this is the 5th and final part of the session here. And just tell me when it feels like you have a good stretch here, Alexis. So this is a hamstring stretch, and I'm not trying to fully lock out her knee here, but I have one hand on the back of her heel, then I have another hand kind of right above her knee. I want to keep her leg mostly straight, but I'm okay with a little bit of a bend. Now, do you feel that in the hamstring area, Alexis? Okay. Most of your clients aren't going to know what hamstrings are, so you might have to ask them where they feel it and make sure it's the hamstrings, but you get the idea. Next stretch is a pigeon stretch. She's really pretty tight on this one. This is just a really good stretch for preventing different sciatic issues. For one, it's just a good stretch. It does feel nice too. And if we've done a tough lower body workout, this stretch is always appreciated. Now again, each of these stretches, I'm gonna hold them for about 30 or so seconds. If one side of the body feels noticeably tighter than the other side, I might hold that tighter side a little bit longer. And the third stretch that I do in this lower body stretching routine is a little bit of a low back, TFL, and kind of outer hip stretch. So my hand is gonna go kind of right above her knee here. I'm not applying a lot of pressure with any of these stretches, by the way. And I'm just gonna push down until I feel a little bit of resistance against me. Does that feel like a good stretch there, Alexis? Mm-hmm. With my other hand, I'm kind of holding her shoulder to the ground. Not everybody will be able to keep their shoulder on the ground. She is, which is good. Oftentimes what I like the person who's getting stretched here to do is to take a few deep breaths, because this one can loosen up. So yep, just take a few deep breaths. Good. And as she's taking those deep breaths, I do kind of feel this leg again moving a little bit further down, which is good. She's done a few nice breaths. We got some good extra movement there. And I would just go and repeat the same thing on the other side. If we've done a lot of upper body work, or if we just want to do some different stretches, these are also some things that I like to do with clients. So Alexis, let me have you clasp your hands behind the back of your head. So all I'm going to do now is kind of put my knee It is going to be in her upper middle back. I don't want to push my kneecap directly into her spine, but I am just bracing her back. And then all I'm going to do is pull back on both elbows here. Does that feel like a good stretch? Okay. So it's just a pec stretch. And most people are way too rounded forward. And this just helps to kind of open everything up. Clients really appreciate it at the end of a session. Just like the lower body stretches, I'm gonna be holding this for about 30 seconds. We'll pretend like that was 30 seconds, probably a little bit less. Next thing you're gonna do, Alexis, you're gonna clasp your hands behind your body and pull everything down and away. Good. And then all I'm gonna do is roll her shoulders back a little bit. And that's because people, again, are rounded forward, and we want to help them not fall into that pattern. So again, I'm just rolling her shoulder blades or her shoulders back a little bit, and I'm actually pulling downwards a little bit too. Again, nothing is aggressive here. These are all pretty light little stretches, but people really appreciate them. And like we said, that increases your value quite a bit. Oftentimes, if it's been a pretty tough upper body day, I'll do those two stretches and then some quick massage gun work. I'll throw a massage gun up on the screen that we recommend. At this point, most massage guns are perfectly good. We have like 5 of them around this studio, and they're all good. Pretty much all I'm doing is trying to calm down some of these over tight upper traps, levator scapula muscles, just all these upper shoulder muscles, and it feels really good. People generally like it at the end of a session, which of course we like that. That works out well for everybody. When our clients are happy, we're happy. Even though it's not a stretch, I'm treating it like a stretch. I might do each side of her back, not focusing on the spine, but the muscles around the spine. And I might do each side of the back for about 30 or so seconds. Again, most clients really like this, so it's not a bad idea to invest in some cheap massage gun. Certainly get your money's worth. Okay guys, so I mentioned how you can kind of switch in different stretches if it makes sense for the client, and Alexis does happen to have really tight hip flexor muscles. Anybody with anterior pelvic tilt, something we talked about quite a bit in the warm-up video, is gonna have that going on. So sometimes I'll substitute out that initial hamstring stretch or any other stretch, and I'll throw in this hip flexor stretch. So what we wanna do is grab her leg, put her knee on top of my knee, and then I'm gonna put my hand on her low back, kind of upper hip area, just so it doesn't rotate. And then all I'm gonna do is apply a little bit of pressure this way until I feel a little bit of resistance against me. And does that feel like a stretch, Alexis?
I think a tiny more.
Tiny bit more? Okay, perfect. So she's feeling a stretch there. And again, you always want to ask like, hey, you know, let me know when it feels like you have a good stretch. And that's where you stop. We're not looking for an aggressive stretch. And she should feel this, well, in her quad muscles, but also kind of in the whole front of the hip area. Is that where you're feeling it, Alexis? Good. So just like any of the other stretches, we'd hold this for 30 seconds. And then we would do the same thing on the opposite side. After these stretches, I will try to get my client to do some cardio. What sort of cardio they do will depend on their goals and their physical capabilities. This isn't part of their session, by the way. I'm giving them something to work on for 15 to 30 minutes, and then I'm saying my goodbyes and moving on to the next thing. In a way, this is still a method of increasing that cool down duration and enhancing results, especially with weight loss clients. But this isn't actually a part of the session. Do not have your client walk on a treadmill or do cardio as a part of their paid session. It's a terrible value. Having them do cardio before or after their session though, well, that's a different story. And there we have it, everyone. That's how you should be cooling down clients to maximize client results, safety, and satisfaction. If you guys have any questions or comments on anything, make sure to leave those down below. I do always appreciate those. And if you haven't already, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, as both of those things do help the channel to grow, and that does allow me to create more free content for all of you. Thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time, stay sort healthy.